Before we get too far into Congress, the main thing we need to understand is the differences between the House of Representatives and the Senate. So today we're going to talk about those differences. We're going to spend all of today comparing different characteristics of the House of Representatives and the Senate. In the picture here, you see two very important people. You see Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, the leader of the House of Representatives. She is a Democrat. And on the right, we see Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. He is a Republican, so he is the leader of the Senate, and his position is possibly going to change after the 2020 elections, and Nancy Pelosi's position looks pretty stable. What we're going to do today, we're going to compare characteristics of the House of Representatives and characteristics of the Senate, and then this will help us to explain House and Senate roles in the policymaking process. So we're going to look at a bunch of different ways in which the House of Representatives and the Senate are different. So again, I'm going to compare many features of the House and the Senate. In this goofy picture here, we see our four leaders of Congress. So the two on the left, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, are the Democrat leaders. Nancy Pelosi leads the Democrats in the House, and Chuck Schumer leads the Democrats in the Senate. And on the right, we have Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy leads the Republicans in the House. He's on the far right, and with his back to us is Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. So if in the 2020 elections, if the Democrats win control of the Senate, then Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell's jobs will switch. Schumer will become the majority leader and McConnell will become the Senate minority leader. If Republicans were to take over the House of Representatives, then Kevin McCarthy on the far right would become Speaker of the House and Nancy Pelosi would become the House minority leader. But let's first take a look at these basic differences between the House and the Senate, starting with the most obvious difference, their size. The House has 435 members, the Senate has 100. The Senate's size could change at any time if we added more states, because the Constitution says there are 2 senators for every state. And the House, their size has changed based on the population of the United States, but they passed a law to cap the size at 435. They passed that law about 100 years ago, so we're stuck at 435 unless the Congress decides to change the size of the House itself. In terms of representation, similar difference here. The Senate, has 2 per state. That's outlined in the Constitution. And equal representation of the states is guaranteed to the states by the Constitution. And then representation in the House is based on the state's population. So states, we do the census every 10 years, including this year, 2020. After the census, we want to make sure that each state's percentage of votes in the House represents their percentage share of the population as a whole. The least a state could have is 1 representative, and so we divide the seats up that way. All the smallest states get 1. The rest of the House seats are divided by the state's share of the U.S. population. They also have different formal requirements. So this is outlined in Article 1 of the Constitution. In order to be eligible to serve in the House, you must be 25 years of age and you must be a citizen of the United States for at least 7 years. So people who immigrate to the United States and become citizens are eligible to serve in the House of Representatives after 7 years, as long as they've reached 25 years old. In the Senate, it's a little bit more for both of those. In a Senate, you must be 30 years old and you must have been a citizen for 9 years. So we start to see how the designers of the Constitution intended for the members of the Senate to be a little older and have a little more experience. What is their constituency? We know the word constituency means the area and the people that a congressman represents. So in the Senate, it's easy. The constituency is their entire state. Each senator's state is their constituency, and all the people in the state are their constituents. In the House, their constituency is a district inside their state. So if they are one of those very small states with a very low population of 700,000 or less, then their constituency is the same as the state. So a state with a low population like Wyoming or Alaska or Montana, their constituency is the entire state, just like the Senate. If they're in a larger state like Tennessee, then the state is divided up into districts, and each representative represents one single district. There are also rules about where they live. House and Senate members actually have the same rule, which is they must live in the state that they represent. So in the Senate, they have to live in their state, which is their constituency. In the House of Representatives, they have to live in the state they represent, but they don't necessarily have to live inside their district. And this was designed this way because we're going to redraw district lines, and we'll get into the complicated way in which district lines are redrawn after every census. But this would prevent the possibility of drawing the district lines in a way to eliminate a candidate for office. The House and Senate have different terms of office. Each member of the House, their term is 2 years, and in the Senate, their term is 6 years. So that means every election, all 435 members of the House are up for re-election. So House members are always focused on re-election because they have an election every other year. In the Senate, their terms are long. They have 6-year terms. The elections in the Senate are staggered. So we have either 33 or 34 senators up for election every 2 years. So only 1/3 of the Senate changes. The 6-year term gives them a little more freedom to worry less about pleasing the public and worry less about re-election. But those members of the House always have to be focused on re-election. They have different leaders. In the House of Representatives, the leader is the Speaker of the House. This is the only position that is mentioned in the Constitution. So the Speaker of the House is outlined in the Constitution, and they are the leader of the House of Representatives. They are chosen by the members of the House of Representatives, which means they'll always be the leader of the majority party. So you see our current Speaker of the House there is Nancy Pelosi. In the Senate, the Constitution says that the vice president is in charge of the Senate. The vice president is the president of the Senate. The vice president does vote to break ties and has power over the Senate. But in reality, the way that the Senate operates, the parties run things. And so the real leader of the Senate is the Senate Majority Leader, which currently is Mitch McConnell. So the Senate Majority Leader is not a position mentioned in the Constitution. There's no such thing as majorities or minorities because there's no such thing as parties. But the Speaker of the House is in the Constitution. The Vice President is in the Constitution. So we want to remember all three of those. The Speaker of the House is important. The Vice President's role in the Senate is important. And the Senate Majority Leader is the real source of power in the Senate. Okay, let's talk about the prestige of these two bodies. The House, we would say, is less prestigious, and the Senate is more prestigious. And really, the way I would describe this is based on who do you know that's a member of Congress? And chances are the national political figures that you know are senators. Most people in the United States, to be honest, most people don't even know their own congressman, but people who do know members of the House tend to only know their congressman, and then they would also know the Speaker of the House. Those would be the relevant the relevant representatives for each person. So you don't have reason to know the other members of the House of Representatives. They don't have that much power. You guys probably know a couple because there are a couple new ones that are starting to get a lot of media attention, particularly AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She is a representative from the state of New York. She gets a lot of media attention, but there's really no reason for that. She does not have a lot of power and isn't super important in the body of the House. So most people don't know any reps outside of their own representative and probably the Speaker of the House, maybe the minority leader. But in the Senate, we know individual senators. Individual senators are famous political figures. These are people that you know by name. So, people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Lindsey Graham. These are all senators that you might hear their name popped up in the news. Individual senators become famous political figures, and people tend to know senators that aren't even from their state. And so the Senate is a very prestigious institution. Part of that's because there's only 100 of them, so it's easier to know them, and there's way too many in the House for us to know. In terms of diversity, the House of Representatives is more diverse than the Senate. Both of these are the most diverse they've ever been. as of the 116th Congress, and that will probably continue to move in that direction with the 117th Congress. But there's definitely more diversity in the House of Representatives. In the Senate, there's less diversity. We do have the highest number of women and the highest number of non-white senators ever. So we have 10 senators who are non-white at the moment. We have 26 women. So that means we have a 74% male and a 90% white Senate. But over on the House side, we have a little more diversity because of the diversity of the districts across the country. We have 115 non-white members of the House. We have 106 women in the House. So we have 24% women and 26% non-white members of the House. So the House is only 74% non-white and 76% male. So it is more diverse than the Senate is, although both have a long way to go until they accurately reflect what the population of the country looks like. We talked about prestige a little earlier, and a lot of that goes back to the media coverage. So when the media covers the House of Representatives, they really cover it as the whole, like they cover it as a group. So we hear the phrase House Democrats or House Republicans. They don't focus on individual members of the House of Representatives very often. When they do, they focus on the leadership. So we'll have a lot of focus on the Speaker of the House, and we might have some focus on the House Minority Leader, who would be the leader of the other party. But other than that, most members of the House are pretty anonymous in the media. They're going to be covered as either the group called House Democrats or the group called House Republicans. But over on the Senate side, since there's only 100 of them, they get a lot more attention, and that's why they become important political figures to us. So when a senator has something to say, or a senator proposes a policy or something like that, they get a lot of individual attention, and that's how we learn names like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz and all these people. So they become important political figures because the media treats them that way, whereas in the House, the media treats the representatives as if they are pretty anonymous. So I want to make sure we understand current control of these two bodies, and this, of course, is going to change based on the election results in a few weeks here. So this will change in January of 2021 officially, but right now the Democrats control the House of Representatives. They have a 35-seat majority, so they have 35 more seats than the Republicans. Over on the Senate side, the Republicans have 53 seats, so they have a majority there. So in a situation like this, we've talked about the lawmaking already. This makes it incredibly difficult for Congress to pass law. The only law that's going to get through both bodies here would be things that are agreed to by Democrats and Republicans. And it's important to make sure that you know your congressman. So the Senate side, let's look at the Senate side first. It's easy. We all have the same senators. So right now, our senators are Lamar Alexander and Marsha Blackburn. They're both Republicans. Marsha Blackburn is new as a senator as of 2018. Lamar Alexander has been in the Senate for a long time, and he's retiring. So he'll be replaced based on the winner of the Tennessee Senate race in the November election. Over on the House side, most of you would have Steve Cohen as your representative. Steve Cohen represents District 9, which covers the vast majority of Memphis, covers almost everything in the city limits. And then David Kustoff covers his constituency is much larger because his constituency covers much more rural areas, but it includes most of the Memphis suburbs, and it covers parts of the city limits that are right around Poplar. So depending on your address, you should Google this and look up who your congressman is, but your congressman may be Steve Cohen, the Democrat from District 9, or maybe David Kustoff, the Republican from District 8. They are both going to be up for re-election in November, and they are both going to win their elections incredibly easily. Okay, so those are some basic differences between the House and the Senate. It's really important that we be able to describe these differences, and it will help us to describe other things that go on in Congress. It will help us explain different processes and all that. So even though a lot of these are very simple, it is important that we're able to describe these differences between the House and the Senate.